You know, whether you love Attack of the Clones or you hate it, one thing we can all agree on is that there was no freaking reason to bring Jar Jar back. Like, honestly. At least they gave him a significantly smaller role, but it feels like old George was dancing around the best possible option. Exile him to some random spice mine in the middle of bumfrick nowhere, where he can spend the rest of his days doing hard manual labor. Or just, you know, kill him off. Believe me, he deserves nothing less.
Mr. Bustin with happiness seeing you again, Annie.
Mr. Bustin with happiness.
You know what, George? Why don't you sit this one out? I'll take care of business for you. Jar Jar, where are you at, big guy? Last week, I did a review of The Phantom Menace, because why the heck not? And I decided, you know what? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. So this week, I watched Attack of the Clones again. And I gotta be honest, this movie is the definition of a mixed bag for me. There are some parts that are actually pretty good, and some parts that are absolute torture to watch.
The thought of not being with you. I can't breathe.
So today, let's go over all of it, the good, the bad, and the ugly, right here, right now. And because I prefer to look on the brighter side of life, we'll start with the good things about the movie. Now, let me be clear, there are some things that the movie does really well in my opinion, and some things it does really badly, but again, we'll get to all of that later. First of all, the main story is actually pretty decent. Now, when I say main story, I mean the part with Obi-Wan and the clones. I do not mean the Anakin and Padme side story. That is just absolutely, well, you know what, I keep edging you with it, so I'm just gonna go over it now and get it out of the way. The Anakin and Padme love story is by far one of the worst things I've ever seen in my entire life, and that's saying something, because I've watched a Hassan Abi Twitch stream.
You said America deserved 9/11. Did you mean that?
Yeah.
You can't keep getting away with it!
Every single scene with these two characters consists of the most awkward moments I've ever seen in my 38 years on this earth. The chemistry between Natalie Portman and Hayden Christensen is simply non-existent, and even when they're actively declaring love for each other, it feels like I'm watching two strangers interact for the first time. Like, I've seen middle school relationships that are less awkward than this one. It's not even funny bad, like I can't laugh when I'm watching this, it's just sad.
Not a day has gone by when I haven't thought of you.
No.
The closer I get to you, the worse it gets.
Wait.
I'm haunted by the kiss that you should never have given me.
Wait.
I don't like sand.
I don't give a fuck.
And Anakin is by far the biggest problem. I know there's lots of jokes about it already, but Bro's Riz is abhorrently bad. Not that Padme's is much better, to be fair, but at least she doesn't try to riz up Anakin every single time they talk. This scene right here is the only time where she actually tries to make a move, and I can see why. She sucks at this.
I'm not afraid to die. I've been dying a little bit each day since you came back into my life.
When I was watching Attack of the Clones to make this video, I was taking notes the whole time, and so many of them are just me writing in all caps, no riz. Oh, you think I'm joking? No, I'll show you. Terrible love scenes. Bro is not the king of riz. Awful romance in all caps. That's how you know I was really mad about it. No riz again, just from a different scene this time. I had to write it twice because it was so obvious to me how bad the riz was. Bad riz. Bad Padme riz. And this is only the stuff I wrote down, boys. It doesn't include how much I suffered silently watching this movie. There were so many awful love scenes, it's not even funny. By the way, you can take a look at the rest of the notes I made if you want, but I feel like they'll only make sense to me, so good luck deciphering that. Anyway, even aside from the actual writing and acting, the love story itself is kind of weirdly done. Like, Anakin and Padme meet up for the first time in 10 years, and then they go hang out together for like a week max, and then kablowza, they get married at the end of the movie. No wonder the marriage didn't last. You guys probably didn't know each other's middle names. All this stuff I'm saying has been said before by other people, but it is physically impossible to review Attack of the Clones and not talk about how bad the romance is. But I am very off topic right now. I originally started this video with the goal of going over the good stuff first, so let's get back to that. The main plot of the movie isn't actually all that bad. I'd say the first about 2/3 of it is pretty engaging, and honestly, it's a decent story. Here, I'll go over the basic premise for you. At the very start of the movie, someone tries to kill Padme when she comes to Coruscant to vote on a bill that allows the Republic to build an army. Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker are assigned to protect her. The assassin tries to kill Padme again, and fails again, but this time, he leaves behind a clue as to who he is, and Obi-Wan decides to use some Sherlock Holmes moves to figure out the killer's identity. While Anakin and Padme go off on their own to Naboo to be as awkward as humanly possible, Obi-Wan goes to his friend Dexter and learns that the murder weapon comes from the cloning planet Kamino. When he goes to look it up on the Jedi database, he finds that the planet has been deleted from the archives, so he goes to Yoda for help. With Yoda's help, Obi-Wan comes to the conclusion that the planet must exist, so he goes to the spot where it should be. There, he finds that, yeah, it does exist, and the Kaminoans have a clone army completely made and ready for the Republic to use. Obi-Wan is really confused, but he plays along and pretends like he knows what's going on. This scene is also pretty well done, in my opinion, because neither us watching at home nor Obi-Wan really know how this happens, so we're both trying to understand together. We learn that the host of the clones is Jango Fett, and that he's also the one who tried to assassinate Padme. Obi-Wan tells the Jedi Council about all of this, and they're also confused. They tell Obi-Wan to go capture Jango, but he's already trying to escape, and they have a pretty cool fight, to be honest. It's kind of sick. Jango Jango's got a lot of nifty gadgets that we get to see in action. Flamethrowers, grappling hooks, freaking razor blades on his arms. It's pretty freaking epic. Even though Jango escapes, Obi-Wan tracks him, and that leads him to Geonosis, where all the bad guys are conveniently hanging out together in one spot. Now, this is where the plot of the movie kinda gets weird. We finally meet Count Dooku, who's supposed to be the big bad guy for the movie. And I am not complaining, I love this man. Up until now, I never knew that older, distinguished gentleman could be so beautiful, but no, it is Christopher Lee, so now that I think about it, it kind of makes a little more sense. Yeah, okay, that actually makes a lot of sense now. But even though I love him, I gotta be honest, it is kind of weird to introduce the main villain more than halfway through the movie, and it doesn't really do a very good job of hyping him up. I think overall, it would have been way better to make him a bigger character and not just throw him in at the end. But I digress. After Obi-Wan gets captured, Dooku just straight up tells him exactly what's gonna happen. Like, I'd kind of forgotten about this, but Dooku lays out the entire plot of the next movie. And not only does Obi-Wan completely ignore him, he also goes and tells Yoda and Mace Windu at the end of the movie, and they also completely ignore him. So you guys are just freaking idiots, I guess. There's no other way to put it. To be fair though, it would be very easy to assume that the traitorous villain is lying to you, and I'd probably react the same way if Dooku told me all that. Even still, I feel like the Jedi should discuss it a little more than they do, but whatever. Anyway, this is where Anakin and Padme come into the main plot, and after a bunch of wacky adventures in the droid factory, they also get captured. The Geonosians decide to kill our three big heroes, and they attempt to do that by trying to maul them with wild animals in a big arena. As you might expect, it doesn't really work out for them, and the three main characters defend themselves for a while. They actually survive for a good little bit. But right as it looks like it's all over for them, a couple hundred Jedi Knights come to their aid, and not just any Jedi Knights, but some of the big guys: Mace Windu, Plo Koon, Coleman Trevor, who I'm sure won't get shot twice and then fall off a balcony. No, I'll definitely miss him, yeah. Coleman was like a brother to me. You know, we didn't always see eye to eye on the affairs of the geopolitical state of the galaxy, but it definitely hurts that he's gone, and I don't think that hurt's ever really gonna go away. But I'll miss him for sure. Boy, will I miss him. Fly high, Coleman. Fly high. So the Jedi hop in the arena and start fighting, and this is where two things happen. The first thing is that the whole battle is actually pretty epic. It's like 20 uninterrupted minutes of the Jedi just going to town on some battle droids. And it is awesome, I gotta be honest. But the second thing is that this part of the movie really makes no sense when you actually think about it for more than 2 seconds. Because even though it's supposed to be a rescue mission, it just turns into COD zombies with the goal of surviving as long as possible, yet still knowing you're gonna end up dying. There's no objective here. After they save Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Padme, the Jedi don't try to escape or anything. They just keep fighting the waves and waves of battle droids and get picked off one at a time. Like, if the clones hadn't shown up here, they all would have died, and I'm not even exaggerating. They just all would have been dead by now. So that's really kind of stupid and just bad writing. But like I said before, it is pretty cool to see the Jedi in their prime, and when the clones do eventually save them, it's pretty epic. And then the ensuing battle that follows is also pretty well done in my opinion, but I know a lot of people didn't like it, which I don't really understand. One big criticism that I've heard is that Yoda should never be caught giving commands to soldiers in battle, and I think that opinion is kind of stupid, to be honest. I just gotta be frank, it's kind of a dumb opinion. This whole thing right here, this entire situation is supposed to show how far the Jedi have fallen. No longer are they simply keepers of the peace, now they're just straight up war generals. They've all betrayed the very ideals the Jedi Order is built around, and that is very evident right here. You're not supposed to like it when the Jedi become generals in battle, and you're not supposed to like it when Yoda directs clone troopers. These things are all very purposely meant to show the failures of the Jedi, and I think they do that very well. On a separate note, there's also a weird subplot thing where the Geonosians have been developing the Death Star planes in their basement because fan service. But it doesn't really take away from the plot at all, it's just kind of jammed in there. Anyway, Anakin and Obi-Wan see Dooku escaping, and they follow him to the hangar where his ship's parked. There, they confront him, and they easily get outmatched, like they just get absolutely bopped. There's actually this really cool scene where Obi-Wan tells Anakin that they should take Dooku together, and Anakin hits him with the...
Slowly on the left. Taking him now. No, Anakin, no! No!
Honestly, this is genuinely one of the best examples in the entire movie about how Anakin is arrogant and impatient. A lot of the movie tries to tell you that he's brash and prideful, but it doesn't really feel that way too much, so this is finally a good example of show don't tell. Anyway, there's a long fight, Dooku is sick as usual, and both Anakin and Obi-Wan end up pretty injured. There's also this really awkward part right here where Anakin and Dooku fight each other in the dark with red and blue lights flashing on them, and all it shows is their faces, and it looks goofy as frick, but the less said about that, the better. Let's move on from that. That's embarrassing, to be honest. Dooku is just about to kill them and leave when Yoda shows up, and now this is where things get awesome. For the entire history of Star Wars, we've been told that Yoda is this great Jedi, this leader of the Order, this inspiration to thousands, and he definitely is really wise, but so far, we have no real idea if he's that powerful or not. Sure, he lifted an X-Wing out of a swamp once, and credit where credit is due, that takes a lot of strength, but we've never actually seen him in a fight before. That all changes here. Yoda goes to town and becomes the absolute beast that we all knew he was, and it is just awesome. Like, it is phenomenal to watch. Again, I know a lot of people don't like this, or don't even like that Yoda has a lightsaber because, oh, wars not make one great, but that's just ridiculous. If Yoda's gonna be presented to us as this powerful figure, he needs to be able to back that up. In the words of Jordan Peterson, there's no virtue to being weak. Well, actually, you know what? I'll just let him explain it.
Well, if you're harmless, you're not virtuous. You're just harmless. You're like a rabbit. A rabbit isn't virtuous. It just can't do anything except get eaten. If you're a monster and you don't act monstrously, then you're virtuous.
So in my personal opinion, Yoda being really strong with the Force and good with a lightsaber makes perfect sense. When we see Yoda train Luke, now we know that he's a man or frog, creature, or alien thing of many talents. Anyway, this fight is awesome, and then from here on out, the rest of the movie is pretty predictable. Count Dooku meets Sidious on Coruscant, and Yoda says, "Begun, the Clone Wars have," and Anakin and Padme get married in secret, and that's it, that's the movie, that's Attack of the Clones. Again, I genuinely think the plot is pretty decent, and even though it's kind of confusing in some places, the story itself isn't too bad. I think it's way better than the plot of The Phantom Menace, I gotta be honest, and way more interesting at that. Also, the world building that this movie provides is really good too. There are so many unique planets with different environments and alien species. Sure, some of those alien species are really freaking weird looking, and maybe the CGI isn't the greatest, but it's still some awesome world building. Another one of the best examples of this is how Obi-Wan's ship can't go into hyperspace on its own, and it needs to attach to this ring right here. By just adding this tiny detail, George Lucas made the universe feel so much bigger and more expansive. It would have been so easy to make it so that his ship could go into hyperspace on its own with no assistance, but this tiny detail really adds depth and expands upon the world that's being built. And speaking of Obi-Wan's ship, another thing that's really good in Attack of the Clones is Obi-Wan Kenobi. I've always said this, but Obi-Wan is one of the few Star Wars characters that's just phenomenal in everything. No matter what part of Star Wars you like, whether it's the originals, the prequels, or the TV shows, you like Obi-Wan Kenobi. And it is no different in this movie. In fact, he's awarded the honor of having one of the few funny jokes in Attack of the Clones.
Then we decided to come and rescue you. Good job.
But even aside from that, he's also just a good freaking character. He is by far the most compelling person in the movie, and Ewan McGregor delivers a great performance yet again. The only real downside to him is one of the biggest flaws in the entire movie, and that is the infamous wooden dialogue. The best acting in the world can't save bad lines, and the lines in Attack of the Clones are as bad as they come, to be honest. Almost everything that's said is so flat and unnatural, and this applies to like every single character. Well, not every single character actually, just the main characters. While I was watching the movie, I actually wrote this down in my big book of notes. Everyone but the main characters have good lines. Pardon my poor grammar, but the point is that I noticed that as long as the characters are side characters or really not that important to the plot, they have freaking normal lines. Like Dexter Jetster talks normally, Watto talks normally. So let me get this straight. You think that these one-scene characters should have good dialogue, but everyone that's actually a big part of the plot should speak in riddles? Brilliant, guys, just freaking brilliant. I applaud your brilliance now. And the worst culprit of this is by far Anakin. His lines always sound weird and drawn out, like he's reciting a school project, not acting in a movie. Although, to be fair, I think this has slightly less to do with his lines and more to do with his acting. Ewan McGregor has equally bad dialogue, but he manages to spin it off in a way that's a little more convincing. Hayden Christensen is just straight up bad at this, I gotta be honest, I'm sorry. Even when his lines are completely fine, or at least closer to normal, he still finds a way to make it sound bad. This is especially true when it comes to jokes, which are simply just never funny when he makes them.
What took us so long? Oh, you know, Master. I couldn't find a theater that I really liked.
That is not funny. That is not, there's nothing.
Honestly, it's lucky that he was so much better in Revenge of the Sith, because I am not a fan of him at all in Attack of the Clones. Everyone keeps telling me that the way he acts is normal for someone who's a slave for their whole life, and then taken into a cult of space wizards. But I disagree. First of all, yeah, he was a slave for 9 years, but in those 9 years, he seemed to live a pretty normal life. Sure, it sucks that he was a slave, and no one would deny that, but it looked like he had friends and hobbies and a good mother and all these outside influences. So I don't see why that would make him so weird. As for the fact that he spent the last 10 years in a cult of space wizards, that would be a good argument for why he's so hard to watch, but unfortunately, it is just completely disproven by every single other Jedi that we see. Like, not a single other Jedi is anywhere near as socially awkward as he is, even though they've all spent more time with a Jedi than he has. Take, I don't know, Obi-Wan for example. That guy is as charming as they come, and he's been with a Jedi his whole life. So I think that Hayden Christensen was not as much a genius casting choice that represented the kind of personality George Lucas wanted, and more of a bad actor, at least in this movie. Again, he's way better in Revenge of the Sith, which I'll be talking about in a video coming out this Saturday, so stay tuned for that. But I genuinely just think that in this movie, he's kind of unlikable as a character, I don't know. And it's even more obvious if you look at Anakin in the Clone Wars compared to Anakin in Attack of the Clones. He's actually a likable guy in Clone Wars, and you can empathize with him way more easily. Now compare that to Attack of the Clones, where moments that are supposed to foreshadow his fall to the dark side are really uncompelling because of the terrible dialogue and bad acting. Again, all these issues are kind of personal, but this is my freaking video, and that's just what I think. Also, I know for a fact that a lot of people didn't like Hayden Christensen in this movie. In fact, let's go talk to one of those people right now. Let's go see what they think.
It's time to fulfill my older brotherly duties and go bother the frick out of my sister. Hey you! Sis word. What did you think about Hayden Christensen's acting in Attack of the Clones?
Who? Oh.
Hayden Christensen's acting?
It was really bad. It was bad. The love scene sucked.
Now, you might be thinking to yourself, Jared, that test is so unfair. She's your sister. Of course she's going to agree with you. And you know what? Maybe you're right. So I decided to do a much more fair test and go into a random lobby of Rainbow Six Siege and ask my teammates what they thought. And, huge mistake on my part. Huge mistake.
Yo, guys, just a quick question, kind of random, but what are your thoughts about Hayden Christensen in Star Wars Episode 2 Attack of the Clones? Just like random question, I know.
Dog, I just got off a 14-hour fucking work shift. I'm just trying to play some fucking Siege.
No, but if you had to pick, if you had to give an answer, I know you like
Shut
Star Wars.
the fuck up, bro.
That was certainly interesting. But anyway, I don't have too much more to say. It's time to talk about the elephant in the room. What the frick? The movie, quite frankly, has an absurd amount of CGI in it. One of the biggest problems that people have with Attack of the Clones is that somehow it looks visually worse than movies that came out 25 years earlier, which is kind of impressive to be honest. I gotta give it to them. Now, unlike most people, I'll actually acknowledge that there are some scenes in the movie that have some pretty good friggin' CGI. The best example of this, in my opinion, is when Obi-Wan jumps on the assassin droid and holds onto it as it flies through Coruscant. You gotta admit, this scene right here looks pretty good, and it definitely doesn't take you out of the moment. However, scenes like that, which are actually done pretty well, are sharply contrasted by scenes like when Obi-Wan goes to Dexter's diner. I don't care what anyone says, this looks like garbage. And Dexter himself looks worse than a lot of characters from literal video games. Like, come on guys, you really looked at this and thought, yeah, you know what, that's good enough to put on the big screen, let's run it. And finally, even when the CGI isn't disgustingly awful, it's pretty obvious that most of the characters are just hanging out in front of a blue screen. Something about the way their backgrounds look, or the way the lighting is, just really gives it away. I couldn't even tell you exactly why, I don't know. But look, do not walk away from this video thinking, oh, Jedwerd hated the CGI, because I genuinely think there are some scenes that looked really good for the time. However, I'd also be lying if I said there weren't some scenes that looked pretty awful, I gotta be honest. So that's all I'm saying, it's a mixed bag, but overall, it wasn't the best. It wasn't the best. And actually, a really good comparison that I've heard before is that Star Wars Attack of the Clones and the second Lord of the Rings movie, The Two Towers, both came out in 2002. I wonder which one looked visually better. I think the answer is kind of obvious. Now, granted, George Lucas did have a much bigger challenge than Peter Jackson. The man had to digitally construct multiple planets from scratch, entire worlds. I mean, that's not easy at all, but you get what I'm saying. It's a fair comparison to some extent. To sum it all up, I personally thought that Attack of the Clones was slightly better than The Phantom Menace. The story was way more interesting, in my opinion, and the plot was far more engaging. The two things that are really dragging it down here are the Anakin and Padme love scenes and Hayden Christensen in general. I know a lot of diehard prequels fans love to defend Hayden Christensen's Anakin in Attack of the Clones, but sorry, I'm just not on that hype train. Overall, I give Star Wars Episode 2 Attack of the Clones a 7 out of 10. It's far from perfect, but in my opinion, it also does a few things pretty well. And I definitely liked it better than The Phantom Menace, but to see what I thought of that movie, you need to watch this video right here. I reviewed it in great detail and went over exactly what I thought, so be sure to check it out. Thanks for watching, boys. I hope you enjoyed, and be sure to subscribe. See you later. Catch you on the next one. Bye.